Royal scandals don't usually kick off with chaos. They don't begin with shouting matches or sudden explosions. They start quietly with a smooth operator. Someone who knows how to move through powerful spaces without raising alarms. The right connections open doors, secrets sit comfortably unchallenged, and people assume everything is under control. This wasn't some messy tabloid fling or a short-lived mistake. It was a slow-motion disaster unfolding behind closed doors, one that crept forward unnoticed until it nearly tore the British monarchy apart. One man slid into the royal inner circle with confidence and charm, carrying habits he never dropped: loyalty he never learned, and lies that stayed buried for decades no one questioned. Whom closely enough, no one looked twice by the time the truth finally surfaced years later. The damage was already permanent: relationships broken, trust destroyed, and scars left behind that could never be erased. And trust me, what comes next only makes the story darker.
Your Highness.
Anthony Armstrong Jones didn't grow up struggling even slightly. Money, status, and elite circles cushioned him from the very beginning, giving him access. Most people never dream of doors opened easily. Opportunities followed naturally, and consequences rarely stuck. But even early on, something about him felt off. Teachers noticed it, friends whispered about it quietly behind his back. There was a restlessness in him, a hunger for attention and control that never fully settled. He had a charm that drew people in effortlessly, making him seem magnetic, interesting, irresistibly. Beneath that charm lived a selfish streak that left emotional wreckage wherever he passed. A serious childhood illness sharpened his instincts, teaching him how to read people and situations quickly, but it also shut him off emotionally, forming a distance that never truly closed. As he grew older, that emotional detachment became part of who he was, shaping the man he would become and the damage he would later leave behind. Photography became his power play and his shield. Behind the camera, he wasn't just observing life, he was directing it. The lens gave him control over attention, over people, and over the story being told. In the position, he decided who mattered and who faded into the background. By the 1950s, he was moving easily through London's elite circles, blending into high society parties, studios, and private gatherings. He lived fast, chasing stimulation and validation, while quietly burning bridges along the way. Nothing exploded publicly at first. Damage happened softly, behind smiles and polite conversations. He didn't crash rooms or announce himself loudly. He slipped into them, understood the dynamics instantly, and made himself indispensable before anyone realized what he was capable of. Even before royalty entered his life, someone had already paid the price for his recklessness. There were people left confused, hurt, and discarded long before palace walls ever surrounded him, and before anyone fully understood the pattern. His reckless streak was about to collide with royalty itself. The world saw glamour and excitement, but underneath, lives were being quietly bruised, boundaries crossed, and trust eroded. This damage didn't arrive with headlines or scandal sheets. It settled slowly in private moments, creating fractures that would only become visible much later, when the spotlight could no longer hide the truth. Princess Margaret met Anthony at a moment when exhaustion had fully set in. Years of rules, expectations, and constant observation had worn her down. Living under a microscope left little room to breathe, let alone feel human. She wanted something that felt real, spontaneous, and unscripted, something untouched by protocol or duty. Anthony appeared as that escapee, was attentive in ways others were not, creative in how he expressed interest, and instinctively knew how to say the right things at exactly the right time. Around him, she didn't feel like a royal asset or a symbol of the crown. She felt like a person with emotions, desires, and choices. For the first time in a long while, she felt genuinely seen. Their relationship lived in shadows and secrecy from the very beginning. Fake names were used back, entrances became routine, and stolen hours felt electric precisely because they were forbidden. Secrecy wasn't a burden to them, it was part of the thrill. Every hidden meeting pulled them closer together while quietly blurring her judgment. The danger made everything feel more intense. When talk of marriage finally surfaced, Anthony made sweeping promises. He swore he would walk away from his career, his freedom, and his old life, whatever it took to prove this relationship was different and real. But beneath the vows and the reassurances, his restlessness never slowed down. It stayed hidden, waiting. Once the chase ended and reality settled and the fallout was inevitable, marriage slapped Anthony into a life he never signed up for. Titles didn't give him respect, they piled on pressure, resentment, and invisible chains. He drifted, Margaret drifted, and the space between them grew into a canyon. Separate worlds, endless temptations, and zero accountability. turned palace life into a slow-motion mess. Asterisk affairs, stacked like dominoes, lines blurred and innocent people got caught in the fallout. The royals tried to play defense, hoping that hush-hush could keep the chaos from spilling into headlines. Asterisk, but it didn't work. Walls were paper-thin, secrets too. Heavy and palace whispers constant. Nothing remained truly private, and every misstep added to the growing tension. Then the leaks started. Photos, rumors and hints of betrayal began to surface gradually, at first almost unnoticeable but impossible to ignore. Soon it all came crashing out. By the time the world caught wind, the marriage had already been dead for years. Anthony wasn't waiting for a permission slip to bail. He had already left, leaving behind a trail of heartbreak that no crown could fix. He moved through life publicly blindsiding Margaret and the royal family alike. Remarriage came fast, and he sold the fantasy that he had finally grown up. Yet, behind closed doors, the same patterns continued. Lies stacked like bricks. Trusts got burned, and one woman waited decades thinking she mattered while his new wife remained clueless to the betrayal happening right under her nose. Margaret's quiet heartbreak lingered in private moments, a shadow behind every public smile. Even his children and close friends felt the ripple, the silent fallout of deceit stretching further than anyone could see. The truth didn't explode, it crushed quietly, leaving scars that wouldn't fade. Anthony, that hadn't changed. He simply left deeper wreckage in his wake. Anthony bounced publicly, blindsiding Margaret and the royal family alike. He remarried fast, selling the fantasy that he'd finally grown up. But behind closed doors, the same patterns kept rolling. Lies stacked like bricks. Trust got burned, and one woman waited decades thinking she mattered while his new wife stayed clueless to the betrayal happening right under her nose. Margaret's quiet heartbreak lingered in private moments, the shadow behind every public smile. Even his children and close friends felt the ripple, the silent fallout of deceit stretching further than anyone could see. Truth didn't explode, it crushed quietly, leaving scars that wouldn't fade. Anthony, that hadn't changed. He just left deeper wreckage in his wake. And yet, despite all this damage, the worst secret, the one that would shake everyone to the core, was still hiding in the shadows. Years later, DNA dropped a bomb nobody saw coming. Anthony had fathered a kid during his honeymoon, proof that the betrayal started before the marriage even had a shot. The mother, his best friend's wife, Princess Margaret, never had a clue the marriage didn't crumble from stress or time. It was built on a lie from day one. When the truth finally landed, it didn't shock history. It explained it. Every heartbreak, every affair, every quiet tension suddenly made sense. Some lies don't explode, they rot slowly, eating through trust, love, and lives. And Anthony, he didn't change. He just left scars that ran deeper than anyone imagined, showing that the real damage wasn't the headlines, it was what stayed hidden for decades.